Hopeless, desperate, numb, useless. There are no words sufficient to describe a suicidal person's state of mind as they seriously contemplate taking their own life. In the majority of cases, this internal battle is faced alone. The isolated sufferer feels that no one could ever understand their pain. For one 17-year-old in 2007, the story was very much the same. A chain of painful events led the Chicago high schooler to prepare for his own death, a tragic end to his young life. But as he made his way to the site where he planned to end it all, everything changed in an instant. He heard a woman's voice calling from his past. Before that life-changing moment, high school senior Kevin Walsh felt as though his life had fallen apart beyond repair. There was a girl, she broke up with me, and then I found out there was some other stuff going on. He recalled to the TV news magazine show Inside Edition in August 2017. My dog died the day of the prom, which was a horrible experience, he continued, further recounting the events that had eventually triggered his suicidal thoughts. Walsh admitted it was kind of like a bunch of regular life stuff, but that it hit me harder than it should have. He fell into a deep depression, one which he presumably believed he would never overcome. Walsh began planning his own death and even penned his final thoughts. I wrote a note, he told People magazine in August 2017. I went to where I was going to do it. Once he arrived at the location he had chosen for his suicide, all that was left for Walsh was to follow through on his plan. I was probably like somewhere between 5 and 10 seconds from taking my own life, he admitted to Inside Edition. And then he felt his cell phone vibrate. Walsh paused for a moment to see who was on the other end of the line, but the caller ID did not pop up on the screen. Furthermore, he didn't recognize the number of the person attempting to reach him. And despite the fact that he was on the verge of ending his life, this fact irked him. Walsh spoke about this irritation of not knowing in the People article. He said, I thought, if there's a semblance of eternity, I cannot spend it wondering who was on the other end of that phone call. So he answered his cell phone. Walsh added, when I picked up and heard the voice, I knew it was her. Her name was Blake Moore, and she was not someone who would typically call Walsh, as was evidenced by her details not being in his contacts. The two told Inside Edition that they had not spoken for a year before that fateful day, the one in which her call interrupted his suicide attempt. Walsh and Moore had met at Bible camp one summer when they were both 13. Despite his tender age, Moore had made an instant and lasting impression on Walsh. He later recalled on the social interaction website Quora, the prettiest girl I'd ever seen walked right up to me and said, black is a good color on you. No idea why. Moore's brave introduction paved the way for the teens to become fast friends during camp. According to Walsh, they exchanged contact information. As was standard at the time, they shared their AOL Instant Messenger screen names. And after that summer, they kept up with one another. But their casual friendship meant that they didn't chat daily or even monthly at that point. And by the time Moore called 4 years later, it had been 12 months since they spoke. When she reached out that day to catch up, she had no idea of Walsh's depression and the tragic event that she'd interrupted. A force must have intervened to connect us and make it happen, she maintained to People magazine. And as it turned out, their conversation was just what Walsh had been craving. It came as a reprieve from his loneliness and presented proof that someone cared about him. Perhaps that's why the suicidal young man felt able to confess to Moore exactly what had been going on when she called. Long story short, she pried, I spilled the beans, and she talked me out of it, Walsh wrote in his Quora account of the episode. He continued, she literally said, what? Don't do that. And that was that. Instead, the pair made a pact that they would speak the following day. Moore, of course, understood how vitally important her impromptu call had been, especially as someone who was his friend and was able to talk with him and understand. Knowing his personality, he's very analytical, and I knew if he had ended up at that point, he had taken all the steps to get there, and he wasn't doing it for attention, she told People. I'm very grateful that I spoke with him because if I hadn't, he wouldn't be here. With that serendipitous moment and the unburdening of Walsh's dreadful secret shared, the duo maintained their friendship into adulthood. They remained close even while dating other people, which tended to cause feelings of jealousy in their respective partners. They even coached each other through their romantic breakups. It was following the end of one of Moore's relationships that Walsh finally felt ready to confess another secret. Years after sharing the one that had initially rekindled their relationship, The young man told Moore that he was in love with her. And as it turned out, his longtime friend and one-time savior felt the same way. What happened next was a whirlwind romance that put any Nicholas Sparks novel to shame, according to a post on Moore's Instagram. The speed with which they fell in love was met with raised eyebrows, she went on. To us, however, nothing could have been more clear. This certainty was made official when her beau presented her with an engagement ring in April 2016. The ring Walsh gave Moore was a tribute to how their love had first taken root. It featured a black diamond, the same color Walsh had been wearing when Moore first spoke to him at Bible camp. Little did they know then that they would get married 14 years later, on September 17, 2016. The date was almost 10 years after she saved his life with a phone call. Their amazing love story touched readers around the world after Kevin shared it on Quora, and it quickly went viral. With their newfound platform, the newlyweds urged those who suffered from depression to reach out for help. Saying things out loud gives it life. It lets you evaluate things in a different way than texting or writing. It applies a different layer of emotion. Blake said to People magazine, "Talk to someone."